evening. City of Opa-locka Planning and Zoning Board meeting for January 10, 2023. It's called to order.
Board member, okay. Board member Audrey Dominguez. Here. Board member Don Mango. Present. Board member Claudine Hibbert Smith. Present. And Chairman Elio Guerrero.
Present.
Attendance confirmed, and for the record, board member Dorothy Johnson, board member Jermaine Barnes, and board member Aldo Mato will not be joining us this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we can stand for the invocation and pledge. Lord, we thank you for the opportunity to be here tonight, and we ask that you guide us in this meeting so that we're able to make the best decisions that we can for our city. Amen. Amen. To the flag of the United States of America. Motion for the approval of the Planning and Zoning Board meeting minutes for 6/7/2022. Or should we do them both together or separate?
You can read them separate, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so if we can get a motion to approve the minutes from the meeting on 6/7/2022.
Move it.
Second. Just for clarification, was it moved by board member Hibbert Smith? Okay, okay. Okay, board member Dominguez,
Yes.
board member Mangum,
Yes.
board member Hibbert Smith,
Yes.
Chairman Guerrero,
Yes.
minutes passed.
And can we get a motion for the minutes from 10/11/2022?
Move it. Second.
Roll call.
Board member Dominguez,
Yes.
board member Mangum,
Yes.
board member Hibbert Smith,
Yes.
Chairman Guerrero,
Yes.
minutes passed.
Okay, we get the first item on the agenda.
Mr. Chair, board members, the first item on the agenda this evening is a resolution of the Planning and Zoning Board of the City of Opa-locka, Florida, recommending the site plan approval for the construction of a 6-story multifamily apartment building on property located at the corner of Sesame Street and Alibaba Avenue, and identify it by folio number 08-2121-004-1861 in the R3 zoning district, providing for an effective date.
Thank you. Can we get the applicant presentation?
Don't have the presentation. Well, I have a USB.
Chairman,
Yes.
may I? Just for clarification, everyone, could you please speak into the mic, please? Thank you.
That's okay.
So happy New Year. So lastly, when we came here, we didn't have the landscape. information.
Chairman,
Yes.
could you
Yeah.
please state your name for the record and address? Thank you so much.
Yes.
Thank you, Chairman.
My name is Harry Joseph. I'm representing Q Realty, Ari Hertz. Lastly, when we came here, October 8th, we did not have the landscape information along with the, facade, of the Moorish facade. Yeah. Oh, in the traffic study. So we have updated that. Yeah, this is the plans. Can you do the Moorish? Moorish. So our architect brought this wrote this synopsis on the design that we did on the 6-story building with regards to paying homage to the Moorish architecture. We were inspired by the mosque in Cordova out in Dubai. And so if you could scroll down a little bit, so. And so therefore, you know, that's the imagery of where our inspiration came for the building. Go down a little bit more. So in the entranceways, we have the ornates surrounding the door, paying that homage to the Moorish architecture. However, I was speaking to Mr. Lee and he informed me that there were more prerequisites to essentially put onto that building. So I had to I had to speak to the architect to essentially tell him to redo that plan. So he's in the process of meeting the jurisdiction's requirements because Mr. Lee informed me today that that wasn't necessarily what the township is looking for. So that's in progress today. With regards to the landscaping, we have executed that. And I haven't heard Mr. Lee's comments yet, but I believe he's in accordance. I believe we're in accordance with what you guys are looking for. Aside from that, that's all I have.
Okay, thank
Yeah,
you.
all right.
Do we have any questions for the applicant?
Sorry.
The changes in the plants and the gardening, I guess, is this included in the packet? Do you know?
It should, I sent the landscape information to Mr. Lee. Yes, yes.
Yes, that information is included.
Mhm.
You'll find the plans located at approximately starting at page 42. Actually, no. Page 41.
And just for clarification, you're
sorry.
saying that there's still some architectural items that are yet to be complied with or changed? But they're in the process.
It's in the process now.
Right.
Again, I wasn't aware of that requirement of the way that the Moorish styles are supposed to be, you know, on the building. I wasn't aware of that.
Okay.
But we did initiate that today. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. We
Well-
could hear from staff.
Yes, we'll have Mr. Lee come up and make a presentation. He's going to speak to some comments that we just received today from the Department of Transportation and as well as the design guideline standards. We received their statement and we kind of wanted to make sure that when it came to the Moorish architecture, it was more of a Moorish that was more reflective of what is in Opa-locka versus what's in some of the other countries that you know, Opa-locka used as its imagery of inspiration. So we wanted to make sure that he knew that we did have some design guidelines and standards, and those particular modifications could be made. It's more of a more of a facade perspective, but we just wanted to make sure that the history of Opa-locka was reflected within their design overall. Mr. Lee will speak to that.
Gerald Lee, Community Development Department zoning official. IT, can you pull mine up?
And make sure you do it right up on that mic, because if you're like an inch away, you're too far away.
Wow, okay. Okay, next slide. This is for development that's on Sesame Street in between Alibaba and Fisherman Street. The property is a vacant property that's just under 30,000 square feet. And it is within the multifamily zoning district, but it's within what we have adopted according to the approval of the commission, which is called the Historic Downtown Opa-locka District. And that's the prevailing zoning that governs this property. That zoning allows for the use that they have proposed, which is a multifamily building with retail components on the first floor. The project, next slide, sir. The project adheres to the requirements of the new prevailing zoning, which allows for the density that they are proffering, but it also is in compliance with the requirements for landscaping, which they have revamped to be in compliance, and parking on the site. Next slide, sir. They're providing 50 parking spaces and 1,650 square feet of retail space on the first floor. Approximately 48 apartment units will be there. Next slide. They're in compliance with the site plan requirements for landscaping. Next slide, please. This is the location in case you didn't drive by. Like I said, it's on Sesame Street in between Fisherman and Alibaba on the west side of town. Next slide. That's a picture of it. Next slide. That's from a different aspect, same property. Next slide. This shows the neighborhood and the uses that are surrounding it. Many of the other properties are either commercial or residential multifamily. Okay, there are no single family properties within the scope or within proximity to this property. And it is in congruence or in agreement with what is around it. Next slide. Staff recommends approval for this particular project, and we recommend that approval with any input that might come from the board. What Mr. Gay alluded to was we got comments from the Tri-Rail property use based on its proximity to this property. They had concerns, and what I want to do is read their concerns into the record so that it can be dealt with. Okay. It says, we hope you receive these comments in time to provide them for the public hearing tonight. It says SFRTA and the South Florida and Treasure Coast Regional Planning Councils have reviewed the proposed Opa-locka development and provide these comments. Development review comments for FDOT and the city. Recommend that development conditions to be placed on the approval that support transit access, provide good pedestrian bike facilities for station and neighborhood access and related amenities such as lighting. It says the zoning change is supportive of the SFRTA's TOD policy for the property shown below and described in the attachment. It says, please add conditions to provide a sidewalk, bike path, or shared use path and lighting along the Sesame Street property frontage between Alibaba Avenue and Fisherman Street. At a minimum, provide sidewalk greater than 4 feet wide and preferably 8 feet. The next is consider associated amenities such as landscape improvements appropriate for the development and neighborhood. And then lastly, it says, consider adding mid-block crossing of Alibaba at Sesame Street or Shahrazad Boulevard with appropriate signage, lighting, and or signalization to facilitate safe access to the station. Then it says, note, the crosswalks are located 0.6 miles apart at Douglas Road and Opa-locka Boulevard. Mid-block crossing in this area would facilitate safer access from the adjacent residential neighborhoods west of the station. Then it says, lastly, a raised crossing in this area would also provide traffic calming along Alibaba, which would further enhance safe access. Those are the comments we received from SFRTA. I'm not sure that the sidewalk is not at the square footage or at the standards that they are asking for. And it probably would require the city to partner with this project to allow for a bigger sidewalk, because that would be the city's not the street, but the swale area. But it's something that can be studied and we can deal with that. Mr. Gay?
If I could just add on, most new projects that come to the city, there's something that is associated with them, usually called impact fees. And there are impact fees that speak to some of the recommendations. There's an impact fee that for street improvements. So we can anticipate and look at where those opportunities are for the cost for making those particular improvements overall. It may not necessarily be something that's garnered specifically for this particular project. We will have to look at it from a larger perspective within the downtown core, so that as other projects come online that we anticipate to be developed over the next few years, all of those particular projects will contribute to those particular costs for those improvements. So we will be doing an analysis to make sure that each project will contribute their fair share toward those improvements.
And I would add one final point, that the site plan does include a sidewalk on both Sesame Street and Fisherman. Just for the record, there's already a sidewalk on Alibaba.
And
So-
as far as the site plan,
Yes, sir.
going back to the changes in the Moorish architecture design, that would affect the site plan as far as tonight's decision.
Well, let me, this is how I'm proffering it.
Mhm.
The site plan, as it relates to the building envelope and the setbacks and the heights, those things are not going to change. But the facade of the building is what we will massage between staff and the applicant before it goes to the city commission. We're expecting that he's going to follow the guidelines that we've provided him for Moorish architecture. And if he provides those motifs on his project, it's going to be great.
Yeah, so then for tonight, staff is recommending approval of the site plan
with the changes that he is going to implement
changes
based
and-
on the standards that we provided him.
And
Yes,
as
sir.
far as the items that you just outlined from the FDOT, should we include those as, or staff also recommends, approval based on, not contingent to those changes, right?
Not contingent, but we will pay homage to what was requested to make sure that the best improvement to accommodate walkability for residents that are catching the tri-rail will have that better access. A
Yes.
sidewalk is going to be created, and if the city can partner to make a larger sidewalk based on impact fee provisions, we sure will.
Okay, any other questions?
Yes, I have a question. I'm not sure if in the previous meeting, they discussed the, height of these, multi-family. Because I know it's listed as a 3-story, but, it's being presented as a 6-story. I'm not sure if in the previous meeting it was, discussed or,
No, it was
Question?
it was a 6-story.
no, but I'm saying like in the previous meeting, I know that there was a meeting that was
Yeah.
discussed this. But it's listed in the property appraiser as a 3-story family. So what's,
Property appraiser?
Oh, the
If you-
zoning?
If you're looking at the property appraiser's information, which I can tell you is definitely dated,
Thank you.
we've made modifications as it relates to the height that is allowed for the zoning within that particular community. As Mr. Lee has already previously stated, we just changed the zoning for the downtown area, changing it from it just being a residential use to more of a mixed use. And that also increased the density for those particular developments within the area. Lastly, I would like to say that we do have to take in consideration that due to the proximity of this project to the airport, it will be reviewed by the Department of Transit as well as the Federal Aviation Administration
because of the height?
because of the height.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Based on where this particular project is located, we can easily anticipate that a 6-story structure would be allowed based on the height of the Amazon project, which is already on the airport property, and the another project that has already been built, which is the senior apartments, which is literally right down the street, which is already a 6-story structure. So we can easily anticipate that the ruling from the FAA would allow for a 6-story structure at this site.
Okay.
Member Dominguez, one other thing. As it relates to information that's provided by Miami-Dade County, they are supposed to follow, as Mr. Gay said, what the city has adopted as it relates to zoning code. And sometimes they have a different update that hasn't happened yet, and so they're behind. And so even though it says 3 stories, the city has already adopted a different zoning and they haven't caught up yet.
Mhm.
So I just want you to know that we go by our code and we give them the information, but we have to wait for them to update that. And that's why it says 3 stories there.
Well, I printed it today, so I don't know when you submitted it to update the different zoning. But, okay, you said if you submitted it? Guess we have to wait for them to change it.
Thank you, man.
Any other questions? Okay. Yes, sir. Okay, so can we get a motion on item number 1, the site plan approval?
I just have a question. I mean, if they said that they had a previous meeting and they had enough time to look for Moorish styles, why haven't they updated that and brought it now? So we can actually vote on it. We're gonna wait until after, it's not supposed to work that way.
Mr. Lee? You wanna-
Mr.
that's
Chair.
More like for staff.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, board members, if I may make a
Sure.
comment on that, Mr. Lee has explained they will continue to work with the applicant to finalize that design. what the board can do this evening, if you're inclined to approve this, is in your motion, one of the conditions would be that it's consistent with the design guidelines and that staff will approve that prior to it going to the commission for approval. So that will take care of any concerns to make sure it's consistent and that Morris design is more fully incorporated into the site plan.
Okay, that makes sense.
Okay, so can we get a motion?
So I have a question, just for clarity. We can go ahead and move a desire to see this project go forward with the stipulation that they work within the guidelines of the city on the Moorish architecture.
Correct. That's with contingency of them following through
Yeah,
with
that would be-
Regis' motion. Move it.
Second,
Roll call?
Board Member Dominguez,
Yes.
Board Member Mangum,
yes.
Board Member Hibbert Smith. Yes. Chairman Guerrero,
Yes.
item passed.
Can we get the second item, developers agreement, read into?
The next item on the agenda this evening is a resolution of the Planning and Zoning Board of the City of Opa-locka, Florida, recommending the development agreement approval for the construction of a six-story multifamily apartment building on the property located at the corner of Sesame Street and Alibaba Avenue, identified by folio number 08212100411861 in the R3 zoning district, providing for an effective date.
Members of the board, Gregory Gay. As the applicant comes up, I would just like to let you know that the development agreement information starts on page 57 and 58. Within your package. As it relates to the specifics, Mr. Lee will speak to those particular items regarding some of the things that we feel are necessary to be a part of the development agreement overall. Staff does recommend approval for the development agreement.
Oh, just Harry Joseph, representing Q Realty. Again, this development, we're essentially trying to assist and build up Opa-locka. And so we look forward to developing this project. So if you guys choose to approve it, thank you.
I just have a question. Is it 45 apartments or 48? 48
48, yes. 48, yes,
with 50 parking spaces.
correct, yes.
What if somebody has two cars?
We have collaborated with the city. And with the engagement, they said that 50 would suffice, so. That's why we made it 50.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that into the mic, please?
Yeah, so we have collaborated with the city. And when we brought this plan to them, they reciprocated and said the parking is fine. So we stayed with 50 spaces.
Board members,
Do you have any design disabled parking there? And if you do, how many?
I believe we do. Yeah, I believe two. We have two.
That's fine. Thank you.
All right, Becky, thank you.
Gerald Lee, Planning and Community Development Department, zoning official. For this item, for the review of the development agreement, the development agreement is pretty much uniform. We have come to that place where we have identified the things that are going to be the most important, and they are not touched by the applicant. So the boilerplate that you see is one that provides timelines for development. They need to submit permits by a certain time. They need to begin construction by a certain time. They need to be finished by a certain time. That is what this document deals with. It is in agreement with what the site plan showed us for heights, setbacks, which properties, what zoning, what they're building. That's in this development agreement. And it also provides the requirement that when before they begin construction, that they have job fairs to hire for construction. And if they were doing retail or manufacturing, they would also provide training and jobs for city residents. In this particular instance, once they build the multifamily project, how much work there is to be had is a little different, but they are required to do job fairs for our residents for the building of this particular development. Short of that, the development agreement also requires that they maintain the property over the life of the agreement, which is 30 years. They have agreed to do all of the things that I have mentioned, and this is what we're asking you to approve to solidify this development.
Right, and as far as the concerns that Mr. Gay alluded to is just those stipulations you just mentioned now?
Yes, sir. They don't have to be, those don't have to be in the development agreement. Those are conditions of your approval, and staff will follow through with making sure that that happens.
Got it. Any questions?
What's the requirement for parking, disabled parking?
Mr. Lee, we have a question?
What's the requirement for disabled parking for a building of this caliber?
The standard for disabled parking is one parking space per 25.
Okay, so 2 is sufficient.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Can we get a motion?
Move it.
Second.
Roll call?
Board Member Dominguez,
Yes.
Board Member Mangum,
Yes.
Board Member Hibbert Smith,
Yes.
Chairman Guerrero,
Yes.
item passed.
Okay, item number 3.
The next item this evening is a resolution of the Planning and Zoning Board of the City of Opa-locka, Florida, recommending the site plan approval for the construction of an 8-story multifamily apartment building on the property located at 2090 Alibaba Avenue and identified by folio number 08212200032100 in the Quarter Mixed Use District MXUOD zoning district, providing for an effective date.
Hi, can I give this to the clerk?
We made enlarged copies so you guys could have a better view of the drawing set in more detail.
Yeah, let's have it.
Yeah, it's a bigger version of what you already have.
Yeah.
Well, good evening, everyone, members of the board. Thank you for listening to us today. My name is Grisel Fujana. We are the architects for architecture here to present this project. I'm here with my partner.
Hi, good evening. My name is Miguel Omar Porras. We're here to present this project, which is located at 2050 Alibaba Corridor. So the proposal of this project is an 8-story residential building. The building has 48 units, and we've been working closely with Mr. Gay and Mr. Lee in having this building.
To the mic.
Yeah, we've been working closely with Mr. Gay and Mr. Lee in having this building be a part of the community and anchor to the community. So it is an 8-story building that at the ground level has retail space, which activates the Alibaba corridor. We see this building as as one of the first development in this empty lot in the Alibaba corridor. And the building has 48 units. The architecture is derived from the actual architecture of the city of Opa-locka. The building has a fully automated parking system, which has all the ADA accessibility, which is we've been working with this technology company. It's a rack system to kind of stack all the parking. The building has a lobby, and we thought it was very important because it is the first development in Alibaba that it speaks to the community, not only by the architectural style, but by having green on the building, by having landscape, which some of these landscapes will be on the residents' balcony. Also, in every floor, this building it has a gym, it has an amenities area, it has a pocket library, which we thought was very important to kind of add this special program to the building. And it has sort of like a workspace in every floor. As you can see on the plans, this is like a mini shared workspace that every floor would have, along with all the building amenities, with the mechanical spaces, the elevators, and the side of the building, working along with Mr. Gay and Mr. Lee, we have lots of space for art in public places. We would like it to have a Moorish tile, architecture motif. That was our idea, but that was recommended by Mr. Gay and Mr. Lee, which could be very interesting. And I'll let my partner speak about some of the unit count of the building and the square footage.
Thank you, Miguel. If you move to sheet A 1.1, you'll see a floor plan of the.
Thank you. Can you please speak clearly into the mic?
Yes, got it. Thank you. If you look at sheet A 101 of the site, the plan set that you have in front of you, we have the site plan where you could see how we set back from the edges of the building. We gave the sides a little bit more setback that was required. We have the 20% open space, which we intend to have a green buffer and have it be vegetated. One of the reasons why we start doing that is so the building has windows on the sides that allow for great ventilation and views for the units. So the quality of the natural light and air that they're able to get in the units, moves towards a better quality of life. When it comes to the numbers of the building, we have 48 units. For those, we would have 85 parking spaces required. We are supplying 88, so we're a little bit above the minimum requirement. The building sits on a lot that is 16,000. Go back. Yes. So it's 15,625 square feet for the site. The building itself with all the levels gets to 92,400 square feet. And as you go through it, we have a mix of units that go from studios, 2 bedrooms, 2-bedroom and a den, and a 3-bedroom apartment type. So we have a mix of units with modern style kitchens and ample living areas that make the units very comfortable and very family oriented. Yeah, numbers.
Any questions?
Okay, this is a beautiful project. I mean, it's gorgeous. I mean, I can actually visualize it. My concern again is the height. I'm not sure if that's something that was already reviewed. Is it gonna pass? Because it's gonna be a question once it goes to the commission as far as the height. I already questioned the 6, story, but this is gonna be 8-story. So has that been checked with, well, Mr. Lee can respond. And also another question, is this gonna be affordable housing or is it gonna be based on what the market price is as far as the affordability?
These are gonna be workforce housing, so.
Say that again?
These are gonna be workforce housing, so they're gonna be condominiums. So, I mean, that's something that the owner is currently looking into.
So workforce housing, unlike low income housing, the difference is that it has to be a certain percentage of the value of the units have to be under the market rate. I believe it's about 15% to under the market rate for the units in the area. So it does offer, a more affordable housing without being what would you call low income housing, which has different requirements, less parking and things like such. Here we meet all the requirements of standard units, but the owner then would have to sign a covenant that I believe would be about 20 to 30 years for that, where they guarantee that their prices will always remain under market value.
So
And-
this property is for the apartments to be sold individual or is it a rental property? How is this? Is it gonna be?
Well, right now, the owner is asking for them to be sold individually.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I can do that. Okay, that's good to know.
Yeah, and for the height, we've actually met with Mr. Lee and Mr. Gay and reviewed the height, so we are within code what the building requires. For that specific area, the zoning area.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other question? Thank you.
Okay, we'll have staff make their presentation at this time. And as Mr. Lee comes forth, to answer Board Member Dominguez's question, within our zoning code, the maximum height that you can go for certain corridors, within the city is 8 stories.
Okay.
This particular area, Magnolia North being the furthest east of this, of the city and the furthest away from the airport, the opportunity to go vertical is actually increased as you go further to the east and away from the airport area itself.
Okay.
Mr. Lee will give his presentation.
Yes. Can you, and in addition, Gerald Lee, Planning and Community Development Department zoning official. To piggyback on what Mr. Gay was saying about the zoning. In the Magnolia North area, the south side of the street is within the corridor mixed use overlay. In the corridor mixed use overlay is the opportunity to go even higher with greater densities. Now, across the street on the north side of the street in that same area, the height is reduced because all of the properties that are proximal to it are of lower density, residential duplexes, single family and the likes. But on the south side, that's where our opportunity to increase and grow the city is on the south side of the street. And so that zoning allows for, Member Dominguez, the 8 stories. And that's why we recommended it and suggested that they do so. As it relates to this project, this is an 8-story multifamily mixed-use development on the property at 2090 Alibaba. It's within a commercial zoning district, but within an overlay that allows for the mixed use. If we didn't have the overlay, this could only be a commercial property. It could not include residential. Next slide, please. That's the location of the property. It's just to the south of the Bowers and Young Community Center. Okay, and it's right next door. It's also adjacent to the Passive Park. Next slide, please. The subject developer is Ecotech, and also supported by Dr. Gibson, and the presenter or one of the other spokespersons is Mr. Nehemiah Davis. Of course, they're going to develop 48 units on this property of varying sizes because of the mixed use opportunity. Next slide, please. I wanted to make sure everybody knew that the properties surrounding this are all commercial for the most part. On the northeast side is the residential duplex zoning, but this entire area is covered by either the Magnolia North overlay, which is lower density but mixed use, or the south side, which is the corridor mixed use, which is higher densities and mixed use. Next slide, please. Site plan complies with what the requirements are of our code. And they included the impact, traffic impact statement to show that this development is not going to clog up the entire Magnolia North area. And they have provided the landscaping that is required by the code. And they've also done something very innovative that I haven't seen before. And that is the implementation of landscaping within the building and on the balconies of every floor. So they're going to incorporate it, but they're also providing for free space, open space on every floor for office and for pocket library kind of things, right, which is pretty innovative. Next slide, please. Just a picture to show you what it looks like right now. It's an entirely vacant lot with a concrete wall around the entire property. Next slide. Just another aspect of the same picture. Next slide. Staff recommends approval based on what has been presented and the fact that it complies with the city's land development regulations.
One question, Mr. Ling, just to touch on something, Ms. Dominguez said, if
Yes,
these
sir.
are rental units or condos that are going to be offered for sale?
Actually, that's completely up to the property owner. We can't regulate or make any demands in that. Ours are standards for development. Ours are zoning for what can be applied there. Okay, but because they wanted to take advantage of certain things that were available to them, if they make it an affordable project, even if it's for sale, it's still affordable. It's going to have some buy downs within it, and it's going to allow for workforce persons to live there, but that means that it has to meet a certain percentage of the area mean for what persons can buy there. Okay, so it is still going to be affordable, but there are levels of affordability, and workforce is one of those levels.
Gotcha.
Yes, sir.
I have another question. The maintenance of the property,
Yes, ma'am.
the maintenance of the property, of the building, who's responsible for that?
Well, if they're doing it for sale, there has to be condo docs. And the condo docs are going to say who's responsible and what they have to pay monthly to make sure that that maintenance occurs.
So there will be a condo association.
Changes now. Okay, thank you.
Any other question? Mr. Lee? Okay, get a motion. See? Do we have, Ms. Hall, any for the public hearing?
For the record, Chairman Guerrero, I have not received any emails or phone calls in regards to the items on tonight's agenda for January 10th, 2023. Thank you.
Thank you. Can we get a motion? Yeah, this is for the site plan.
I make a motion to approve the site plan.
Any second,
Second.
roll call.
Board Member Dominguez,
Yes.
Board Member Mangum,
Yes.
Board Member Hibbert Smith,
Yes.
Chairman Guerrero,
Yes,
item passed.
next item.
A resolution of the Planning and Zoning Board of the City of Opa-locka, Florida, recommending the development agreement review approval for the construction of an 8-story multifamily apartment building on the property located at 2090 Alibaba Avenue and identify it by folio number 08-2122-003-2100 in the quarter mixed-use district MXUOD zoning district, providing for an effective date.
Thank you.
Move it. All right.
Well,
We have to hear from the. staff.
probably not, but maybe for the development agreement, there's something the staff want to add anything to a presentation as far as the development agreement is concerned? Nothing, and nothing from the applicant?
And just to let you know, the development agreement starts on page 144 within your packet.
Mhm.
So you'll have an opportunity to peruse it. It is pretty much one of our standard development agreements as it relates to the timeline and the expectancies of inclusion of employment opportunities for residents within the city of Opa-locka. So it really speaks to those particular specifics. If there's anything that any of the board members feels needs to be added to or amended as a part of this development agreement, you would have an opportunity to make those recommendations at this time.
And staff recommends approval of the development agreement at this moment.
Yes, we do. Staff does recommend approval.
Any other questions? So Mr. Dominguez made a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Roll call?
Board Member Dominguez,
Yes.
Board Member Mangum,
Yes.
Board Member Hibbert Smith,
Yes.
Chairman Guerrero,
Yes,
item passed.
item number 6.
And the final item this evening is an ordinance of the City Commission of the City of Opa-locka, Florida, to adopt a text amendment to the land development regulation ordinance 15-31 to permit tandem or mechanical parking for multifamily development in the R2 through R4 zoning district, providing for conflict and repealer, providing for severability, providing for an effective date.
Gerald Lee, Planning and Community Development Department, zoning official. This is an amendment to the city's zoning code, the Land Development Regulation Ordinance 15-31. This particular one is an amendment to the parking section of the zoning code. What we wanted, what we're considering here is that there are instances when you need to provide parking, but this is a vehicle to allow for the parking that's required and somehow reduce how much space is needed to accommodate that parking that's required. And what we're suggesting is that we offer the opportunity for tandem parking, which is one car in front, one car in back for the same unit. For the same unit. And so this applies in single-family districts. So you'd have both cars right behind each other and you provide that space according to what we have here. For a single, well, let me back up. The tandem single-family parking is for single-family duplexes and townhouse units. They will be permitted for individual lots, single-family home, that's one lot, and tandem parking there, or a townhouse, one lot and tandem there. And it's allowed when enclosed in a structure or each space is accessible from the street or an alley. And except for ingress and egress, no portion of an open parking facility shall be located within 5 feet of the property line so that, you know, they're not in danger of backing into the street or something of that sort. Okay, the other thing is for tandem parking that's going to be in multifamily or mixed-use developments, it's a maximum of 2 vehicles being placed behind each other. So it's not like 8 cars in a line and then people are fighting about getting out of their spaces or whatever. It's only 2 tandem parking spaces at a time, that they should be assigned to a single apartment building or dwelling unit. And the parking dimensions for using this vehicle is 40, which is 2 car lengths, 40 by 10 feet wide. And so there's a standard for providing the tandem parking that we're asking for. And then the maximum number of parking spaces is no more than 50% of the total number of spaces that they have to provide for the parking, for the development that they intend. Okay, and tandem parking shall not satisfy the parking requirements for guest parking. It is for the required parking only. Okay, with those things in mind, I want to also provide this. This amendment is also going to address mechanical parking. In some places, you have mechanical parking where you pull in and then that mechanical either lifts it up or puts it in a place. We want to allow for mechanical parking also, but with these requirements that the detailed parking layout plan and report be provided to the city, and they provide design specifications which are prepared by an engineer. And as a note, we want to say that the peer review, other professionals who do only reviewing of this type of mechanical use, that if we have to pay a cost to have somebody else review that the developer pays that fee. Okay, and that also that a performance guarantee for the repair and maintenance of the mechanical lift is required before a certificate of occupancy is going to be issued. And what that means is we're going to require that they have to show us how they're going to make sure that they always have the money to keep this thing repaired. Because the worst thing that could happen is the city approved a mechanical parking apparatus, and then it breaks down and they say, we don't know how we're going to get the car down. We don't know how we're going to get them out of there. So these are our requirements that are part of this amendment that we're proffering. Staff recommends approval. It's something that we think we need to have in the city, and we recommend it. Sir.
So this will account upon approval for no more than half of the required spaces of a particular project?
To be tandem, yes, sir.
And board members, if I may add, what we have noticed over the last 2 or 3 years as we've reviewed particular projects, based on those particular designs, trying to meet their parking requirements, in several instances, they weren't able to do it in a typical form and fashion. In some cases, they would have had to design a garage configuration, which would, in a lot of cases, basically blow the budget for a project. The average cost per space for a garage configuration is probably somewhere between $25,000 to $30,000 per space. So if you have a 30 unit or 40 unit development, you're immediately kicking out upwards of $3, $4, $5 million just for the garage alone. So what we've seen done within other municipalities is to allow for these configurations of parking where, especially for those unit owners or tenants that have 2 cars, they can have those cars parked front to back instead of the typical side to side format, which basically takes up more space, requires more maneuverability as it relates to ingress and egress. And it makes it a lot more easier to accommodate a larger amount of parking within these particular multifamily developments, which is where we're seeing it. As it relates to mechanical, we're moving into the 21st century. And there are projects in Dade County that have mechanical parking, where you basically put your car into a conveyor belt type device, and it moves your car up and down or sideways as necessary. We're hoping that
That's right.
we will be able to utilize that particular type of design within the city of Opa-locka itself. If a developer or property owner would like to see that particular type of parking configuration or utilize that particular type of parking configuration to save space in order to meet the parking requirements for the development, this is something that we can do. And even with mechanical, there are other communities that allow for a mechanical lift. Something very similar to what you would see in a mechanic's garage when they're doing repairs on a car. It's just that this is basically to allow for one car to be stored above the other, which allows for additional parking opportunities. So we wanted to be able to put this legislation within our code to give developers and property owners other alternatives as it relates to how the parking configuration and parking, addressing the parking requirements and how they can be resolved.
As far as the mechanical, the lift, for instance, you will essentially have two parking spaces in what used to be one. How would we count that as far as the required by the zoning for the, or by the density? Would that count as two instead
Each
of
lift
one?
each lift counts as a parking space.
So it'd be, okay.
Count as two.
So then it'd have to be required that that lift never be removed. If not, it'd be half of the amount
Correct.
with subsequent owners. Yeah, that's
Correct.
a good idea, though. I agree.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
There's actually even some cities where private parking lots itself, they have those lifts,
Mhm.
so they can get more cars in
Yeah, but the
and charge
city's,
more money.
the city's maintaining it, so it'll be,
In a lot of cases, they're not maintained by the city, they're
Oh, it is.
maintained by the property.
I guess it's the way of the future.
So we would like to at least put this type of legislation within our code, so as developers look at those particular options that can be placed on the table. If they want to build a garage, they can build a garage, but if they want to do something that may be a little bit more affordable for them and meet the parking requirements, which this board, along with the commission, has basically said, you need to meet the minimum parking requirements. So this legislation will help us address those concerns.
Questions? Thank you, Mr. Gay. Can we get a motion?
Move it.
Second.
Roll call?
Board Member Dominguez,
Yes.
Board Member Mangum,
Yes.
Board Member Hibbert Smith,
Yes.
Chairman Guerrero,
Yes.
item passed.
Thank you. There's nothing else, Mr. Gay?
We have no other items to present at this time, but I do want to make an announcement. First of all, Happy New Year to everyone. Glad to see the board coming back together and taking care of some of the actions related to the city. Secondly, we have a new staff member that is a part of the planning and community development staff. Mr. Solomon Inkoff is with us. And he is serving as our economic development manager. We've never had an economic development manager in the city that I'm aware of. And this is something that I've been asking for for several administrations for quite some time, for us to begin to focus on the economic aspects of different projects and programs that are being presented to the city. So we're looking for him to bring a wealth of knowledge and information. He comes from the private sector. He's worked with development entities in Aventura and in other parts of Miami-Dade County. And he comes with a wealth of knowledge and definitely thinking outside of the box as it relates to government operations, to help us create some new and innovative ideas to increase the economy for our city. So please welcome him.
Thank you, welcome.
Other than that, I believe we've exhausted the agenda. Thank you.
All right, so the Planning and Zoning Board is adjourned. Thank you and good night.